but I was on a one-way street and they wanted to tow a car the wrong way down the one-way street. And there was like 10 cars lined up, so I'm alive to tell about it. It wasn't my car. No, you could be right.
Mary, did you tell him who you were?
You know, it wouldn't do any good anyways. They wouldn't recognize me with my mask on. All right, good morning, everyone.
You pull the mic closer here, Mary.
This,
Yeah.
I don't think it'll,
Oh, I guess it doesn't move. Okay.
okay. It's,
Adam will fix it.
all right. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to the hearing regarding the nomination of Nicholas Parsenios to the position of Associate Justice of the Probate and Family Court. I'd like to introduce the counselors. Counselor Paul DiPaolo, Counselor Terrence Kennedy, Counselor Eileen Duff will be here shortly. I thought I saw Counselor Iannella. Yeah. Counselor Marilyn Petito Devaney and Counselor Robert Jubenville and Counselor Joseph Ferrara, who is also on his way. At this time, I would like to start this hearing by first reading the letter from the governor. Dear counselors, I am pleased to nominate Nicholas Parsenios to the position of Associate Justice of the Probate and Family Court. I submit this nomination for the advice and consent of the Executive Council pursuant to Part 2, Chapter 2 of the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And we are happy to have everybody here this morning. We've got Attorney Ann Jeffrey on. She's coming in by WebEx?
Yes.
Okay. Miss Amy Koenig and everybody knows her as Betsy Elizabeth Quigley, Attorney Elizabeth Quigley. So we'll do the witnesses that are here first, unless you tell me that Judge Jeffrion is available.
I believe she is available.
All right. So this is the Honorable Eileen Duff and the Honorable Joseph Ferrara.
Morning.
We're going to proceed. First of all, I'd like the witnesses who are here to please stand, be sworn in. You swear the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth as it relates to the matter now in hearing before this honorable body.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. We'll start with Amy Koenig, and I would invite you to come and sit in the empty chair up here. Thank you for coming. You may proceed.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Amy Koenig. Is it an honor and a privilege to address the Governor's Council today in support of Nick Parsenios' nomination as a probate and family judicial appointment? I'm speaking to you today as a private citizen, not on behalf of the Massachusetts Probation Service, rather from my personal observations and experiences working with Nick for nearly 20 years in a professional capacity, as well as my personal perspective as a fellow parent. Nick has many qualities that make him not only a great attorney, but also a truly good person. He is kind, he is always respectful, and he displays the highest level of integrity day in and day out. I've only observed patience, attentiveness, and thoughtfulness when Nick deals with clients, fellow attorneys, judges, probation officers, and registry staff. Nick is a practitioner who seeks resolution for his clients. He counsels his clients to have realistic expectations of the court process and the outcomes. I often observe Nick listening intently to clients and helping his clients come to an agreement that they are comfortable with entering into, as opposed to just simply litigating a matter before the court. In Nick's work, he is always conscientious and concerned with the well-being of children. His concern for the well-being of children and his ability to see the benefits in coming to an agreement for his clients make him not only an excellent family law attorney, but will make him an excellent judge. When I pull a case to perform a dispute intervention with Nick, I'm confident that there will be a true focus on the issues at hand and an openness to resolve those issues for the betterment of the family. Overall, Nick's reputation is you just look forward to the professionalism when you work with him. Nick consistently gives his time through his volunteer work as the lawyer of the day. In this role, he counsels litigants on his legal expertise to those who have been deemed indigent by the court. Nick also serves on the panel as an ARC attorney. In this role, he's provided crucial information to the court regarding the voice of the child. Nick also has been vital in our Berkshire Conciliation Program. In this role, he has performed great conciliation work when appointed by the court, and this really has shown his strong skills in being able to listen to both sides of a case, act fairly, and look at settlement options for the betterment of the parties. Nick's pro bono work that I just touched upon has been instrumental to some of the most economically disadvantaged members of our community. Moreover, back in 2008, Pittsfield was identified as a hub location for Cultural Appreciation Day within the trial court. This is a week-long statewide celebration of the diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts of the court. This was going to be a large event, festival in Pittsfield, and we were going to have community members, employees, and nearly 100 high school and middle school children in attendance. We also wanted to have food vendors to provide for the kids and the community members that would serve ethnic dishes. It was my knowledge, and I was aware that Nick was involved with other charitable organizations in our community in a festival type format that provided ethnic food. So I reached out to Nick for a reference and connection. Nick, without hesitation, offered to make the food and bring the food to the event. He served baklava and the other panakopita, which is delicious and sold out. He not only brought the food, but he served the food in the booth. We also at this event had the Pittsfield Police Copsicle program. This is a mobile program that gives popsicles to children in the community by police officers. The whole effort of the program is to strengthen the relationship between law enforcement and children. I digress just to tell you that little background because at the end of the day, Nick provided all the proceeds from the selling of food to the Pittsfield Police Copsicle program. This is just a small example of Nick's character. Day in and day out, he just does what he needs to do to help out people and goes above and beyond. On a more personal note, my 3 children and Nick's daughter, Chloe, are in the same school district. Nick is always in presence at all the local sporting events, cheering on his daughter and other local children. His picture hung in the lobby of our children's after-school program. This is because Nick volunteered in a role in a program of meeting with seniors one-on-one to answer any legal questions that local seniors may have. In general, Nick as a parent is just as respected, well-liked, and well-regarded as I described in his professional capacity in our community. In conclusion, I'm confident that Nick's work ethic, his steady demeanor, and his integrity will make him a very effective jurist. It is my humble opinion and respectful recommendation that Nick's nomination as a Massachusetts probate and family court judge be confirmed by the Governor's Council. Thank you for considering my remarks, and thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Counselor Devaney.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Your personal testimony means a lot to me. Tell me what you do so that I understand.
I'm a chief probation officer at the Berkshire Probate and Family Court.
Okay. So tell me what you have observed about this nominee.
So what I've observed about Nick, as I briefly mentioned in dispute interventions, specifically one case we worked on, Nick was representing a client who had some unrealistic expectations of the court process, and she was emotional, and Nick really did an absolutely wonderful job being empathetic to her, being open to listening to her concerns, but ultimately being very patient with her and explaining that they may be unrealistic outcomes of the court, and really trying to counsel her to give her a more realistic approach, and so that she would feel comfortable with entering agreement. So that's what I see him do. He listens to his clients.
And he's had some sad cases about neglected and abused children. Have you seen that part of his, what he has done? He's done a lot pro bono.
Nick has done a lot of pro bono work. Yes, as I mentioned, he has been an attorney for the local ARC program. Again, I feel like I've seen him work in the utmost sensitive nature, caring for children, listening to children, listening to families, and ultimately it feels like all of the work that he does, again, is for the best interest of children in mind.
Well, that's good to hear. It really is so egregious that it seems child abuse seems to be increasing. And it's families, it's mothers, and killing them and hiding them, and it's just horrible. So I wanted to hear from you because I was impressed with his compassion for the children, and I think that's a good attribute to bring to the bench.
I agree.
Thank you so much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions? Hearing none, thank you very much, and you're excused. You can certainly stay, you're welcome to, but we're going to get our next witness up.
Okay,
Thank you. At this time, we'll hear from the attorney, Elizabeth Quigley. Betsy?
Good morning, counselors. As indicated, my name is Elizabeth Quigley. I'm a practicing an attorney in Berkshire County. I've been practicing law now for 40 years, and I've known Nick for the entirety of his professional career as a practicing attorney in Berkshire County. Just a little bit about my background to understand the perspective that I come from in terms of offering my testimony today. I have had the distinct honor of serving under the then regional judicial nominating commissions of Governor Weld, Governor Cellucci, and Governor Swift. And during that tenure, I had the opportunity to review judicial applicants, both in terms of their applications and their personal qualities for the purpose of making recommendations ultimately to the governor about appropriate candidates. In that capacity, over a very lengthy period of time, I've reviewed probably 300 or 400 applications and made numerous recommendations through the committee to the governor. And I have to say that having known Nick and also reviewed the relevant documents that he submitted for his application, I really can't think of a more highly qualified and excellent candidate for this judicial position than Nick. Part of our perspective at the time and part of my perspective now as a simple lawyer appearing before you as a witness is to impart the fact that there are different types of judicial candidates that come before this body. There are some people that will present with trial skills that span 30 or 40 years, and basically their main focus is doing trial work. Nick, on the other hand, is a diverse candidate, and I think that is his big strength as a candidate for your consideration. From his submissions, you will, I'm sure, notice that he has had an extensive career. He served as essentially a what would be Ohio's version of a DCF child worker, and in that capacity served children and had exposure to difficult situations that he had to intercede about for many years. He came to the law late in life. He became a lawyer when he was 30 and brought to the law the vast experience with families and children that allowed him to essentially start his career running. Once he became a lawyer, he worked in various capacities, but I think for your consideration, the most important thing to observe about his early career and then his subsequent experience in private practice is the diversity of his private practice. Not only does he practice in the area of family law, which you've heard about from Ms. Koenig's, but also has a vast amount of experience in the area of real estate, business, and business-like law. I mention this because as a sitting probate judge, one of the critical roles that he'll participate in is presiding over cases where there is complex litigation about business and business values. In Berkshire County and Western Mass in particular, the vast amount of employees, people that come before the probate court own small businesses. And one of the things that bogs the system down and bogs litigants down is the issue of how to get to the bottom line of what those businesses are worth. The fact that we have an applicant here with such substantial experience legally in the area of business law and also eventually real estate, I think complements and really reinforces his strength as a candidate when it comes to presenting as a potential probate court judge. He also practiced and practices in the area of domestic relations law. I had the pleasure of dealing with many, many contested cases with Nick. Was an able adversary, always on target with the position that he took on behalf of his client. He was an extremely zealous advocate, but he was a reasonable advocate. And I think one of the themes that you'll hear echoing through all of the testimony of the different witnesses that present today is that people have a sense of relief when they deal with Nick, because they know that they're going to get somebody who is ethical, a straight shooter, fair, an aggressive and zealous advocate, but somebody who will listen and who is reasonable. And those traits are the traits that are immediately transferable to a judicial candidate and eventually a judicial appointee in terms of showing the strength of the kind of judge that Nick will be. He's at the time, presently, I believe he's been practicing for almost 23 years, and I think that allows for a plethora of experience in all of these areas. But again, his general practice experience is very diverse and will be a great aid. Knowing how things work in Western Mass and the Western Mass probate judiciary are very collegial, and they consider themselves in a way a certain unified unit. Many times judges will call one another and seek advice about a particular case because, hey, look, have you ever confronted this kind of issue? Nick will be that kind of resource for the other judges that sit on the bench who have come from other good and comparable experiences, but not the very same experience that he presents in terms of his legal diverse background. Nick eventually became essentially the organizer and chair of the Berkshire County Probate Court Conciliation Program. This is a program that was started to help with high conflict divorce cases in Berkshire County. Now, unfortunately for the courts, and maybe for me as a lawyer, I tend to get involved with many cases that turn out to be high conflict cases. That being said, Nick has presided over this program with great integrity. He has participated in many, many conciliations of cases that were unsolvable. He eventually solved them, and he has convinced numerous attorneys to participate and volunteer their time in this program. I think that the qualities that Nick identifies in his application for what a judicial candidate should have, he satisfies in spades. He says that a judicial candidate should have a history of service to others and the community. I think that goes without saying, and you'll hear that from the other people, I believe, that testify on his behalf as well. He says that a judicial candidate must demonstrate an excellent temperament.
Go ahead.
An excellent temperament. He does, and I think you'll be able to be the best judge of that. Finally, he asks that a judicial candidate have a reputation for adhering to the highest ethics. He does. And finally, that they show an ability to work with others collaboratively and effectively. All of those qualities apply to him, and therefore it is my great pleasure to wholeheartedly recommend his candidacy and approval as a judicial appointee.
Thank you very much for your testimony here today. I would like to introduce Counselor Christopher Iannella and
Hi, good morning.
Counselor Jubenville. All right. Counselor Ferraro, were you raising your hand?
No, it's pointing to Council Jubenville.
Okay. Counselor Jubenville.
How are you?
Good, very well, thank you.
Thank you for that presentation.
Thank you.
So how long did you spend on the JNC?
I'm going to say around 12 years. During
Have you
the,
ever had it happen to you that you went into a court, somebody said to you, did you vote for this judge that's on a bench?
I don't think it's ever happened to me.
Really? It happens to me all the time.
Does it really? No, I think people were afraid
Only
to
they
say.
say, did you vote for that? Yeah. They
No, I don't think. I think people were kind of, maybe it's a little bit different out where we are, but people were kind of afraid to mention something like that. At least that's my
So what
perception.
I'm looking for, and I thought with your experience, you could give me the answer, is to know which ones are going to turn out bad before I vote.
Well, I hope that none of them turned out bad that I voted
we
for.
all
but-
hope for that, but we know that's not right.
Right.
So you don't have the answer for me.
Well, I'm not sure I know the question, so why don't you say it to me again? Pose it to me
Well,
again.
you vote for somebody,
Right,
and you think they're a good candidate.
right.
And then you're in a courthouse and somebody says, you vote for that person that's sitting on that bench. He or she is the worst judge I've ever seen.
Right,
Or words to that effect.
right.
Never happened to you.
It really hasn't, but if it had happened, I'd also be thinking about the questioner. Because,
So let's assume it had happened. What would you think about that after you got through with your?
well, I would say that, the only predictor of future conduct is history, right? And to the best of our ability, we have to look at the history of a candidate and the history of a person and hope that the trajectory forward is going to be consistent with that history. Everybody can make a detour, as we're all human beings. People are fallible, and sometimes judicial candidates that become judges can be fallible. But if we look at the history, and if the history is strong enough, it's a very strong predictor of how they're going to achieve on the bench. So,
Well, I would somewhat disagree with you. I have known lawyers that I thought were wonderful people,
right,
good lawyers, good personalities. Then they become a judge,
right,
and I shake my head. So I asked a very wise man that worked here for many, many years, 50 something. How come I miss these things, the candidate? How do I miss that? And he said to me, you don't miss it. People that have that in them get the perceived power of the judge. Change. They haven't had the opportunity before this to have that power. So they changed because they became a judge. So how do we handle that?
I don't think you can handle it. I think again, if you look at the history of a candidate and you see that it factor that tells you that they have great character, great integrity, great performance in their field, the best you can do is look at the history as the predictor of their future conduct. I think also that when you become a judge, you're going to be targeted sometimes if you come down with a decision that doesn't, that the other, that's
No, I'm
one
not
of the
talking about the
litigants.
disagreements on.
You're just talking about somebody that exhibits
Somebody's
bad.
attitude on the bench,
They
somebody
become abusive
interrupting
or a
lawyers
problem.
when they're doing closings, somebody who has a bad temperament on the bench.
I think that that's why there's such a focus at all the different levels coming up on temperament issues, because I agree that traditionally and historically temperament can be a problem, but I think that the process of winnowing out those candidates that may be evidencing the tendency to have a bad temperament when they get on the bench, I think that the process winnows a lot of that out, because eventually, between the due diligence that's done at the Judicial Nominating Commission level, the Joint Bench Bar Committee level, the investigations that take place when the governor is investigating the candidacies of people for the purposes of appointment, I think that front and center is temperament and the prediction of how this person's going to eventually.
If that were true, then we would not even be having this discussion, would we?
Well, I think that unfortunately we're dealing with fallible human beings on every level.
Well, we get the applications like you do.
Right.
We get the references like you do. So I know enough to know that no one ever puts anything bad in their own resume.
Right.
And they don't put people down to call
Right.
that they've had an issue with.
Right.
So when somebody says, well, all these references, well, yeah, but you've called them all before to ask them if you could put them down.
Right.
They're not going to talk bad about you now,
Well,
right?
I have to say that in my experience, and this is just my own experience, I have been called by different people along the pathway to a judicial appointment, and I have had to say things that sometimes I didn't feel very good about saying about a particular candidate. And many times it has to do with the temperament issue. So I think that the temperament is an important focus all the way along. And while nothing is infallible, I think that there is a very big focus on it. And I think that most people feel a sense of duty and responsibility if they're called, especially during a due diligence phase at any one of the level, to speak in a straight manner to whoever making the questions.
Well, we would hope.
One would hope.
But when somebody gets a call who's a lawyer
Right.
in Pittsfield probate,
Right.
and the person in the JNC or the governor's council calls them, they're going to say, wait a minute now, if I say anything bad about this nominee, it may get back to him. And then I'm going to go into that court and, I'm going to suffer. So I find people don't always tell us the whole truth about a candidate.
Well, I know that is a factor. I know that that's something people do think about. But on the other hand, people generally are assured, whether this is true or not, of some sense of anonymity on these things.
Oh, you didn't talk about his temperament. Is he going to be a fellow
He's
on
gonna
the
be-
bench that's going to be, we're going to be talking about 5 years from now?
No.
Like, oh my God, I can't believe
His
it.
temperament is the best. Is the best. I think Ms. Koenig's talked about this. I didn't want to be duplicative because my vantage point was a little different. But I mean, I could talk all day about his temperament, how great it is.
You ever seen him lose his temper?
Never. I'll tell you a little.
He must be a pretty fine man.
Especially with me,
I'm
because
pretty patient, and
I could be a pain as a lawyer on the other side. But I'll just tell you one thing that says it all about this candidate. In the event that he is given the chance to serve, he has to basically break his practice up. He probably has 30 pro bono cases right now. And he consulted with me about what he should do and how can he get other lawyers to take these cases over. And he offered to retain people out of his own pocket.
Really?
That's the kind of guy he is.
We should give him our cards.
Yeah, I know. I know. And people adore him, and nobody would everybody out of respect for him would take his clients over without question as a newly hired pro bono client. But that's the kind of guy he is. So when the temperament issue, I think you heard about previously. I didn't want to overwhelm the council with that, because I think the perspective I have is a little bit different than that. But I mean, he's got the best temperament ever, and I think.
If I do work in Pittsfield, so if I hear something bad about this nominee after he's on the bench, I can call you.
You can call me.
You can call him, right?
Right.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Counselor Kennedy?
No. I served under Governors Weld, Salucci, and Swift.
In that time you were on there, you never got a single complaint about any judge you ever voted on?
No.
Because Council Juneville and I talk about it all the time. We're in court every day. He's
Yeah.
in court every day. I'm in court every day.
Yeah.
And I can't walk through the courthouse without hearing something about one judge or another. And most of them, by the way, that you hear about are probate judges.
Right.
That's most of the complaints.
Well, so just so you know, our regional JNC at the time, we did not do the probate judges. We did the district court.
I hear about district court and superior
Yeah.
court too, but most of them are probate court. Not too many of them,
Right.
but there's, as Councilor Devaney always says, we don't have a crystal ball.
Right.
We can't tell how people are going to act when they're on the bench.
Right.
But there are people that we've put on the bench that I thought would be terrific judges that are up there just treating lawyers awful.
Right.
Not many of them, but there are some. And when you don't hear about the good ones, you hear about the bad ones. I find it hard to believe 12 years. I assume people knew you were on the JNC.
Oh, yeah. And I'm in court every day, too. So I'm in front of them getting, bounced around all the time.
No names.
Yeah.
But there's, I'm sure there are some judges you voted on that you're looking at and say, oh, geez, why did I vote for this person?
No, I don't think I
None?
felt that. I did not feel that way. No, I didn't. I think
I got a couple, and I can tell you right now, by the time I go to court tomorrow, they're going to be asking me who they are, if they were one of them. But I got a couple, sure.
Yeah.
I go in.
Point of information, that was back when she was on, it was a regional.
No, I understand how it worked.
Yeah, it did.
I know it was a
So
different
she
setup.
only dealt with good
but
people
still,
out the West.
Still, I mean, you're still voting on people that, there are a fair number of judges out in Berkshire County that,
Oh, yeah.
so I can't believe they're all perfect.
Nobody's perfect. Right?
Well,
Talking to the council.
Except
You're not allowed to say that, right? Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Councilor Kennedy. Councilor Devaney.
Thank you. Thank you for coming at such short notice.
Yes.
I want to know what you know about this, a nominee, but I'm curious about the JNC. Because you're not the nominee, but I'm very concerned about the JNC, the way it's being run now. So you had 21, you were one of the 21 attorneys that was chosen.
Well, at the time I was on the JNC, there were actually, I believe, 4 JNCs. And there
I'm
was
sorry.
a
Okay,
separate.
all right.
and there
You
was
had
a-
the district.
And there was a
Okay.
separate juvenile JNC.
Okay, all
And then
right.
there was a big JNC.
Yeah, that answers it. Okay, I want to ask you about your experience with the nominee in court. How many times have you been, approximately, that you've been maybe the opposing attorney?
I'm going to say over the last 20 years, 30 times, 30 to 40.
Oh, wow, you got a good witness. I'm very interested in mediation.
Yes.
And, but first, I just want to get back, just to get my comment in. I know someone who should be removed from that court. I've got more complaints, but you know what? She'll never be removed, and she's hurt so many good people. Enough said, okay? But anyway, about mediation. You had one case, mediation. You represented Mr. Austin?
Miss Austin.
I'm sorry.
I had Miss Austin.
Okay, it says Randy. I thought that was.
Yeah, the girl.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Okay, so that's still going on?
No, it's resolved. He resolved it finally.
Oh, great. So I know, but you tell the public about that.
All right. So this case was a very hotly contested trial. We had to reconstruct a prenuptial agreement that got destroyed from our point of view by the other side. So eventually, through several documents and through oral testimony and part compliance, we were able to convince a judge that there was a validly executed prenuptial agreement, and eventually he enforced it. And this is a multi-million-dollar case. It's about $4 million involved.
Wow.
So the long and short of it is, we have in Berkshire County, we have a lot of real estate in the southern Berkshire area that's very valuable. And they did have a home in Monterey, Massachusetts, that eventually sold for over $1 million. So and they had contiguous land. So there was a big complex problem with the contiguous land and a view easement, and also some encroachments because the husband got the land and we got the house. And so Nick stepped in and he developed a good trust with both of them, but in particular, Mr. Ferger, who was the husband. Mr. Ferger was a difficult personality. Eventually, he stopped working with the lawyer that he worked with. and it was a contentious relationship with the lawyer, and eventually represented himself, which made it that much more difficult. We wound up doing post-judgment litigation. I filed an equity complaint over the real estate, and Nick was able to kind of mediate both of them, gain both their trusts, and bring the case over the finish line in terms of a resolution of this complex real estate and in judgment enforcement action. I represented my client all the way through, but took a back seat to let Nick, handle that.
Do you believe that judges, if they are put on the bench in their 50s, that they bring more life experience than if they got someone 40 years old?
Oh, yeah.
We just voted someone 40 years old, worked in a city hall, one of 13 senior solicitors, and worked for a sheriff. 2 jobs.
Right.
And he's on a bench.
Right.
And to me, they should be in their 50s. You have to bring life experience with your qualifications and with your experience, because there's so many people out there that are getting locked out, not getting an interview. They get an interview, and then they're dismissed. And unfortunately, political people jump the line. Not in this case. Thank you, God.
Yeah.
So, but it happens. You see it all the time.
I think the life experience is huge, because what is a person but an amalgamation of their education experience and professional focus.
Right.
So-
And the other thing too is, I think when you're older, not every nominee like this does pro bono work.
Right.
And I have seen resumes. I haven't had any time for pro bono, and I think, wow, that's such an attribute for someone to do that, to reach out to help someone who doesn't have the means, who doesn't have the money, who doesn't have a lawyer. So I think that having pro bono experience shows compassion, and I don't vote for anyone if they don't have compassion or empathy.
Yeah.
I got to ask you something. Why didn't you ever think of being a judge?
Well,
I'm sorry.
there's so many reasons that all over the
That's
lot.
not fair. That's not a
Well,
fair question. I've never asked anyone in 21 years, so forget.
I would be honored to be a judge, but I also love practicing law.
Yeah.
And so I always kind of looked at my professional evolution as being within the context of.
Well, I'll tell you, your testimony means a lot. And I've said this before. Sometimes we have someone sitting in that chair, and I'll say, "How many times have you seen this nominee?" "Oh, once in court." Great, that's wonderful. That really means a lot to me. But your testimony, really, I know it means a lot to all the councilors. So thank you for
very much.
coming. Appreciate
Thank you very
it.
much.
Yes, Councilor Anello.
Yes.
Nominee had a pretty diverse practice, correct?
Yes.
This is the probate and family court.
Yes.
What else does he do? What else has he been doing besides probate and family matters?
He has a substantial real estate practice.
What does that mean? That
Well,
mean like
he does
closings?
real estate closings, negotiating easements, understanding the dynamics of zoning issues, et cetera. All of that is transferable on the issue of both real estate and business valuation. And that's a big part of the probate practice in divorce, especially in our area, Western Mass, because so many people are self-employed and there's a lot of land, and people are owning the property that they're operating their businesses on. And so that's a big component in the particular practice of Western Mass.
So are you suggesting that, I'm just curious, that most of the people who get divorced in Western Mass are business people?
No,
Because I can tell you that I'm from Suffolk County.
right.
I don't do probate. I think I've done 3 cases my whole life. But I would venture to guess that 98% are not business owners.
Well,
Are you suggesting
out where
50%?
there's a lot. I mean, people are landscapers, have their own little landscaping
Well,
business.
we have those people.
There's contractors galore. Every type of trade person you can think of. There's a big construction boom out there right now.
So
Excavation. So people have these little mom and pop businesses.
Yeah.
And we don't have that much industry out there. So you don't have these middle class, jobs that are where people are bringing home a paycheck. I mean, I have a very substantial probate practice, and I'm going to say a third or more of my clients are in some form of being self-employed.
Okay. So these mom and pop shops, as you said, why is it so important to have business experience?
Because so now you've got this mom and pop business, maybe it employs 6 or 7 people. Now you've got it's been in business for 30 years. Now there's a divorce. Who gets the business? How is the value established? How is it established in relation to the property that it operates on? Let's say that it's a tire distributor and it's on commercial property. Well, how is that property evaluated? It's a closely held business. There's 1 or 2 stockholders. Those are the kinds of things that our probate judges deal with day in and day out. I'm sure that if you get into more rural areas, other than the urban areas where there's the socioeconomic level is different and there's different types of employment opportunities for people, it's different. But out where we are, that's really a big deal. And so to understand the ins and outs of real estate values, to understand what an easement does to a particular piece of property in terms of marketability, to understand the tax implications of a closely held corporation versus a C corporation. Those are things that Nick knows about because of the practice that he's had and because of the diversity of the practice that he's had.
Okay. No, I appreciate that. I was just under the impression that the Bernier case
Yes.
controls all of it. I mean,
Well, it doesn't. It doesn't.
Excuse me.
Oh, sorry about that.
That's all right. I mean, if you have a business and they're fighting over the value of the business, both sides are going to get experts. And at the end of the day, the Bernier case is that's what it's about. Whether he got a ton of experience or not, it's good that he has it, and I appreciate it. But to me, the Bernier case is going to.
The Bernier case is very important for many different propositions. However, there are some there are very serious disputes about the Bernier case and whether certain aspects of it control or whether the pre-existing law still controls and that it's fact-specific. I just had a case where that came up recently, and I have the great pleasure of knowing personally and also appearing before Judge Randy Kaplan, who wrote the Bernier decision. And so we get, now that she's retired, we do get the insight from her as to what the interpretation of that case
And I believe she's a mediator now.
Yes, she is.
Yeah. No further questions, but the Bernier case still is the law of the land. You may have disputes about it, but I'm not a fan of the Bernier case.
Yeah.
I'm very familiar with the Bernier
Yeah.
case. But the law of the land, but
It is, and it provides some guidance, but there's some disputes about it too, amongst the judiciary, so.
okay.
Just so you know, as a point of information, the Berkshires, not Western Mass, but the Berkshires are like Nantucket on land. In other words, you've got New York border there, and all these folks from New York come in and buy up the property and basically take what used to be a lovely farming rural community and have just decimated it in terms of property values and the fact that he's going to be sitting in Hampden County is less than Hampden County. But, and in Hampden County, you do have the cases where valuation of assets, et cetera, is critical. But the Berkshires is as special to Western Mass as Nantucket is to Cape and Island.
And I appreciate that. I know Nantucket, call me naive, I didn't realize that the Berkshires was similar to Nantucket. If you go to Nantucket for a week, it's going to cost you $12,000 a week in the summer to rent a place.
Saying
So-
Berkshires is better.
No, I'm saying I didn't realize that it was in that league. Call me naive. I didn't realize it was similar to Nantucket with respect to
Just a
price.
point of interest, people, especially in the Lenox area where Tanglewood is, people will rent their houses for a month for $25,000 or $30,000.
Right. And Tanglewood's up there, and James Taylor's up there, and all of these other folks that, like Yo-Yo Ma.
Oh, yeah.
I met Yo-Yo Ma in a restaurant.
Manny Axe?
Yo-Yo.
Emmanuel Axe is there?
And he loved to drink, huh?
Emmanuel Axe
Yep.
is there?
Yep. So it's a very charming, interesting place. But you got to have the fun.
Yeah. Well,
That's
thank you
why-
very much.
That's
Thank
why
you.
I live in the Springfield area. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Judge Jeffrian, are you with us?
Thank you for all your time. Appreciate it.
Yes, I am.
Welcome.
I'm sorry, what?
Thank you.
This is Judge Ian Jeffrian, retired First Justice of Camden County Probate Court, who, in my opinion, was a superstar in being able to handle all of the trials and tribulations of Camden County Probate Court. So, and I know you're here today to speak on Nick Parsenios' behalf, but if he's half the judge you were, we got a real winner here. So you may proceed.
Thank you, Judge Counselor Hurley. I'll pay you later for those remarks. It's a pleasure to see all of you again and to be here again. It's my honor to have been asked by Attorney Parsenios to speak on his behalf before you today. It's without hesitation that I wholeheartedly support his nomination for the position of Associate Justice of the Probate and Family Court. I had the privilege of being appointed as a Circuit Justice of the Probate and Family Court in 1998. As a result of my position, for approximately 11 years, I commuted between East Longmeadow and Berkshire County, and I was assigned to hear matters primarily in Berkshire and Hampden County. My first months on the bench coincided with Attorney Parsenios' first appearances in the Berkshire Probate and Family Court. And as Attorney Quigley referred to, I was one of those people that breathed a sigh of relief when Attorney Parsenios appeared before me. He would always present his case thoughtfully, cogently, efficiently, and effectively. He quickly garnered a reputation with lawyers, judges, and court personnel to be an individual of integrity, compassion, and preparedness. One of the many outstanding qualities he possesses is humility. He takes the matters he's working on seriously, but does not take himself ever too seriously and rarely argues a frivolous position. In my 19 years on the bench, I've had the opportunity to observe Attorney Parsenios on numerous occasions. He has advocated for fathers, mothers, and children. In the background of every argument he makes and he advances is a concern for the current health of the family unit and the health of that unit post-separation. He clearly understands that while judgments terminate legal relationships, they do not end human relationships. And in the cases involving children, those relationships, albeit different, continue post-judgment. Over time, I saw him grow as an attorney and observed how the bar began to hold him in high regard. Difficult lawyers, no, not Attorney Quigley. No, that doesn't include Attorney Quigley. Difficult lawyers who are unable to agree on much often agree to submit their dispute to Attorney Parsenios as conciliator or a mediator in order to attempt to reach settlement. He settled some of the toughest cases that seemed would only be resolved by difficult and prolonged litigation. Lawyers would choose him as a mediator due to their respect for his demeanor and command of the law. Litigants appreciated his kind, respectful, and even-handed approach. Having served on the bench for 19 years, I contest to the fact that being a judge in the Probate and Family Court is extremely challenging. Attorney Parsenios has expertise over the years that demonstrate he has a keen grasp of the procedural and substantive law required to be an effective judge. However, what I feel is even more important than that. He has a demeanor, character, and temperament that is so needed and so vitally important, particularly in the role of a probate and family court judge. He is patient, calm, kind, and respectful to court personnel, litigants, lawyers, and judges. Those characteristics can't be learned, taught, or acquired. In the current environment, there are additional difficulties and challenges that attorneys Parsenios will have to face. Mounting case laws, backlogs, and insufficient resources. I am confident he is up to the challenge. He will judge as he demonstrated in practice, by following the law first and rendering decisions fairly and equitably without bias, prejudice, or favoritism. Attorney Parsenios is deserving of this nomination as Associate Justice of the Probate and Family Court and as a former judge in the Hampden County Probate and Family Court. I urge your support. I thank you for your time today. And once again, I would like to express my appreciation to all the counselors for your time and efforts throughout this process. Thank you.
Counselor Farrar.
Judge, thank you for your kind comments. Have you ever seen him during a trial?
No,
Do you know how many cases he's tried?
I think he's only tried 5 or 6 contested to conclusion. He's done an awful lot of pre-trials, motions, contested motions before me. Those are by representation primarily. So I've never seen him try a litigious case.
Yeah, so sometimes I'm confused because we've had people come in here and say the best divorce lawyers don't actually try a lot of cases because they resolve everything. And then we get other witnesses who said, I've tried 100 divorce cases and I'm great. So I'm not sure, which is true, or somewhere in the middle.
I think it's somewhere in the middle.
Do you think having tried 5 cases is enough to become a judge?
Yes.
And what would be
Yes.
the basis for that? Like,
Well, I think
issues and things of that nature.
I know that he stays current in the law. I know he participates in MCLE. He's at any time we did an annual seminar in the Western Mass, which initially Judge Koenig and I started for all Western counties. He was always there. I think the most important attribute that he has is demeanor.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? Counselor Devaney.
Nice to see you, Judge.
Nice to see you again.
Yeah, welcome back.
Thank you.
I was wondering if there is one time that you saw this nominee that it impressed you. Was it a conciliation? What was it that you observed?
Well, his appearance to me in court, as I mentioned in my presentation, there are a lot of lawyers that you struggle to retain your demeanor when they appear before you because of arrogance or whatever negative quality they may have. It was always a sigh of relief because he was so clear, cogent, efficient in his presentation, calm. It was a delight for him to appear before me. I know other judges feel the same way. You just breathe a sigh of relief that you have somebody here who knows their stuff, who's not going to present improperly, and is fair and mindful of that.
Can you think of an adjective that you would give to this nominee that he would bring to the bench?
I guess adjective is not gentleman, is it? Gentleman is a noun. He's compassionate. He's calm. But I think, as Attorney quickly said, and Chief Justice, or Chief Probation Officer Koenig said, he's believable. He's an advocate, but he doesn't push the envelope too far. That's not an advocate.
I appreciate that, and I'm happy you said compassion first. That's what we need. And I think the mentoring program is helping. But I wish we could get to that one on your probate and family court. We're not going to change her, and it really hurts me because I get a lot of calls. It's unfortunate because we get a lot of good judges, but probate is so sensitive, especially what's happening in our society. So thank you for what you do, and we appreciate your service. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none. Just to more or less add a little bit of experience to your question, Councilor Ferreira. The really good lawyers are the ones who settle their cases. The ones who tell you they've had 100 trials, they either can't get along with anybody or they're churning the files. They're bringing 100 motions. They're going to try a case. They're going to beat the death out of it because they want to make money. They charge fees based upon how much time they put into a case.
There's lawyers that do that?
I know
Aren't they supposed to make money?
they certainly can make money, but in probate cases, there's enough of them. They overflow. And I was involved in one case at the end of when I did probate practice and had cases with Judge Jeffrey on, we settled them because we both knew what the outcome was going to be. At the end of my time practicing law, was involved on a divorce case from the criminal aspect. So I was defending the husband on a criminal case that got thrown out because it was so specious. And the lawyer on the other side is and still continues to be an absolute disgrace. So in that case, which should have been settled, the fees are over $100,000 for one lawyer.
That's all?
Times two, that's an awful lot of money to waste that could have been spent on the kids. So it's a tragedy in some ways. Thank you so much. Great to see you.
Great to see you,
And,
Chip.
Don't be shy about picking up the phone.
Okay. Thanks.
Take care. Yep, bye. All right, it's 10 after 12. I have not heard anything about when the LG is going to appear.
I did just see her walking down the hall, so she's in the building.
Okay. So we'll continue with 12:30. Thank you. All right, so at this time, I would invite the nominee to introduce to us his guests here today, having already met Ms. Koenig and Attorney Quigley.
Thank you, Counselor. Today with me, I have Attorney John Graziano, the President of the Berkshire County Bar Association. I believe you've met Ms. Koenig. Dana Parsons, an attorney and colleague and friend, a member of both the Berkshire and the Hampden County Bar Associations. My 13-year-old daughter, Chloe, and my wife of 19 years, Leslie, with whom I celebrate our wedding anniversary actually today. So I thank you very much, Counselor. Okay.
I believe he goes by the standard of happy wife, happy life. So at this time, we'll hear your opening.
Thank you, Counselor. Good morning, Counselors, and thank you for the privilege and opportunity to appear before you concerning my nomination today. Thank you to Counselor Hurley for her support and assistance, as well as to all of you for taking time to meet and speak with me. I would like to express my deepest appreciation to Governor Baker, Lieutenant Governor Polito, the Governor's Legal Counsel, Mr. Ross, Lauren Green Petrigno, the members of the Judicial Nominating Commission and Mass Joint Bar Committee for bestowing the deeply felt honor and overwhelming privilege of appearing before you today. It is truly a humbling experience. My path here, just as I believe that everyone who appears before you, has been a circuitous one with fits and starts. And when I say this, I don't mean merely in the context of my application for a judicial position, but my life path generally. I'm the grandson and great-grandson of Greek immigrants who variously fled war and poverty over the course of the last century. They settled in Maryland and West Virginia with literally nothing to their name. But despite having nothing, they came to find work in coal mines, own a restaurant or a candy store, and a small grocery. They had to survive the Great Depression and some the threat of starvation, but they did. I'm very fortunate to have known some of them as a young man, and I've ingrained their struggles into my being. Their adherence to strong work ethic and boundless generosity, even in the face of having little to give, as well as their deeply ingrained lesson of treating others the way you yourself expect to be treated. It's these memories and lessons of those who came before me which drive me and which act as an ever-present reminder of my own privilege and how their sacrifice and struggle have made my life an easier one and one I believe they dreamt I would have. Against this backdrop, and as I've grown through the years, I've come to know that very few people have enjoyed a life like mine. I don't mean to imply that I come from a wealthy background, but a middle-class one, with an intact family where my mother was a school teacher, my father a claims adjuster who had a law degree but never practiced law, and he was the inspiration to my becoming a lawyer. They were each the first to attend and graduate from college in their families. Despite being raised in a strict household, I always knew I was loved and supported. And being a proud American, I acknowledge my story is not unique in many respects. It is, in fact, the American dream. But that dream is not one that's been realized or enjoyed by far too many of our fellow citizens for a variety of reasons, conditions, and circumstances which are coming to light in this era. With my upbringing and these various realizations as a backdrop, and as I grew from childhood to adulthood and observed how many of those around me did not come from this same background, I elected to strive in my own life whenever possible to help others. For as it is said, to whom much is given, much is expected. As attorney in this great Commonwealth, I've sought to do my part to be a contributory citizen by working hard, raising a family, working with and for those less fortunate, whether it's through my own pro bono work, acting as an attorney representing children, working in several Lawyer for the Day programs, being a member of the Berkshire ARC Human Rights Committee, which acts as an independent oversight board concerning the treatment, health, and safety of the disabled within the organization's care, acting as a volunteer program coordinator for the Probate and Family Court Conciliation Program in Berkshire County, helping out our local youth association, or working and managing our church's annual Greek festival. I strive to give back with an eye towards lifting up. My work ethic, as I touched on, comes from witnessing those who came before me. At the age of 15 and through my college years, I worked as a dishwasher and kitchen manager in a Cincinnati chili restaurant owned by family friends. After graduating from college, I was drawn to child welfare, believing I could make a difference in the lives of children who were less fortunate than I, not out of a sense of sympathy alone, but out of a sense of hope that I could somehow add something to their or their families' lives in the same way that was done for me. Within what, in retrospect, seems like a very short time, I was honored with a promotion to supervisor and the responsibility of supervising 6 caseworkers. It was from and through these experiences I felt compelled to do more. Law school seemed like the next most logical steps. Having visited Massachusetts several times during my life, in 1993 I chose to move here, began law school, graduated in 1997, and worked in various part-time jobs throughout. After taking the bar exam, faced with the need to cover student loans, I secured a clerk's position in the law department of the Berkshire Life Insurance Company, where I was living at the time. Once I passed the bar exam, I was offered a job in the legal department, quickly came to the realization that working there, despite the steady income, left me feeling unfulfilled. I began a search for a new job, and the general counsel of the corporation allowed me to transition from working there into private practice as a contract attorney. Since the middle of 1998, I've worked as both a solo practitioner and for a period of time with a close friend under his firm's name. In 2013, I elected to return to solo practice and go back to on my own, so that I could have more flexibility in my schedule to accommodate the needs of my then 5-year-old daughter and a consequence of the demands of being a 2-income household with my wife, who was employed with a local corporation. Since that time, being in private practice, as many of you know, comes with its strengths and weaknesses, but it certainly gives one exposure to a wide range of insights into oneself, other people, and the frontline struggles of people and lawyers alike. Nevertheless, I've enjoyed private practice, as every day brings new challenges to confront and learn from, and the truly unique opportunity to make a difference. For whether my client is one with few or no resources or money and just needs a guiding hand or help in a case, is a member of a class of the working poor, or someone with seemingly unlimited resources, I've learned something from each matter and person, and they've all added value to my life and experiences. You know from my various application materials, my practice concentration is and has been for many years in probate and family court matters, and general real estate law with an active mediation practice for domestic relations matters. I've worked on substantially all of the wide gambit of matters which come within the purview of the probate and family court, from prenuptial agreements to custody disputes and complex divorce cases to probate matters where the decedent, in one instance, was the victim of a homicide, and all the unfortunate, sad, challenging, tragic, desperate, and often contentious types of matters in between, with a broad cross-section of our fellow citizens. Despite the plethora and obvious series of challenges which flow from the handling of these cases, I've always strived to treat every litigant and attorney with respect, and with a focus on how to minimize the trauma on the parties, and most importantly, the children involved, where they are part of the matter. In 2016, I was appointed by the local bench bar to act as Berkshire County Probate Family Court Conciliation Program Coordinator. And with the invaluable assistance of a truly great group of conciliators and the obvious support of the court, we've been able to build a program and create one which enjoys a very high settlement rate. I'll admit I've gotten credit for a lot of the work the program does, which I find misplaced, because it's only through teamwork and the contributions of time and talent of the conciliators and the clerk's office staff the program has been able to get where it is today. It's from my participation in that program and the interest in seeking a judicial appointment originated. Process of guiding and working with attorneys and litigants in the context of the disputes which come before the probate court, through negotiation towards a resolution of all or at least some of the issues which divide them, and seize the seemingly interminable and perpetual suffering these families go through, which they as litigants go through, and not to mention the degree to which litigation encumbers the ability of the litigants to be co-parents. It's my success and passion in and with that program, as well as the success I've enjoyed in my practice generally, that led Judge Richard Simons and others to encourage me to apply for this vacancy. Had I not, until I was encouraged, thought of being a judge, but when presented with the opportunity to use my passion to work with others to resolve their disputes in the various ways the court does, I couldn't pass up that opportunity, and I wanted to try to be a part of the process to work with others in this realm. It's beyond obviously the needs of the citizens and the Commonwealth as relates to the matters heard before the court are overwhelming, just in terms of sheer volume alone. The pandemic has only increased these challenges. Litigants appearing before the court are in addition to the legal matter which confronts them, and the usually sad or tragic situation that has caused them to need the court. They're struggling financially, trying to juggle a multitude of factors, including how to navigate the court in the first place, poverty, daycare, demands of work, struggles with poverty, etc. The lives of litigants and the practitioners which appear before the court seem to be in a perpetual pressure cooker. In this respect, it is my hope that with my background and temperament and experiences, I can be part of the team and the solution to these issues, recognizing all too well that I'm just one person and will be only one part of that team. Nevertheless, I want you to know I'm aware of the challenge and stand ready to do my part if you determine me to be an appropriate candidate for the position. For as I said a few moments ago, to whom much is given, much is expected. And I recognize that if I am ultimately honored with your approval of my recommendation and nomination, very much will be expected of me. And I accept, and I am prepared to meet that challenge. With that, thank you, and above all else, for your time and consideration of my nomination today.
Thank you very much. I would also note that I neglected to ask if there was anyone in opposition. There was nobody else here. I forgot. So I would note for the record that there was no one else here to opposition. This time I would open up questioning. Just so you know, LG at 12:30. I would intend to go to 1 o'clock and then have lunch an hour. Okay? Councilor Duff.
Person, thank you, sir. Had a really terrific meeting with you, talk. You're one of, we see so many terrific people here. I mean, by the time folks get here, they've been pretty well vetted. But I have to say, and I feel a little cliche saying this, I think after a great in-depth conversation with you, you've applied to this job for all the right reasons. Your background is a little bit different in the sense that you've come to the law a little. I hate to think 30 is late in life, but apparently it is. And you have a great deal of experience on different levels in what we're proposing that you do in the court. Let me ask you, how do you see that? Do you think your life experience before you became a lawyer is helpful? And if so, why?
I do, with respect to it gives me the advantage of perspective as to what the litigants are going through. Actually, walking into someone's home to investigate an allegation of abuse or neglect, or to try to help someone who has reached out to help. It's that it's having had the experience of that one-on-one,
Yep.
real world, not as an advocate, but trying to ascertain what led to the allegation being made and how can we help that family. So I think it's that hands-on that is beneficial.
What do you think is the biggest challenge that you would be facing in the court? I mean, I guess that's a broader question, not just you personally. I mean, whatever your personal challenge could be. But what do you think the biggest challenge is facing the courts today?
I think,
And it may be more than one.
I would say at this point, right now, it's probably the backlog and volume of cases as a consequence of the pandemic.
Yep.
But I also think the rising, and I reflected this in my application, the rising number of pro se litigants appearing before the court.
Yep.
I think those are two real challenges. Because, frankly, the pro se litigants don't know how to navigate the system as well, and for better or for worse, especially with the pandemic, have difficulty having documents in order and ready to go when cases are called.
I think that's a very keen observation, because I think it's very true. We've heard from some pro se litigants, but other things who've been here before us, and they seem to be, and it's not a criticism or fault of theirs, but they seem to be very confused as to how the system works. Sometimes they'll ask a lawyer or a judge a question, and sometimes they get upset if they get an answer saying you never should have answered it. And other times they get upset if they don't answer it, saying you should have answered it. And there really seems to be a lot of confusion and maybe a no-win at that time. And I know I've never encountered, and not during the pandemic, but I have been known to go and sit in sessions all across my district. My great advantage is I'm not an attorney, so a lot of people don't know who I am. And every once in a while, a judge will say, "Who is that lady who's been sitting here?" Because I want to see what's actually happening. And so you do get to observe in a different, really by impartial way, what is happening. And I think that's a really great point. I know the bar associations, and I know attorneys really try to help. And the lawyer of the day is a real big help. Some courts, there are, like in housing court, there's a tremendous amount of free advice and help for people. Not as much in some of the other courts. But that's a very keen observation. I thank you for bringing that to our attention. I don't know what we could do to rectify that. I do think there are some things that the legislature could do. But it would be a lot of deep diving and work. And the truth of the matter is, with the pandemic, all governments, state, municipal, federal, are really stretched to the limits. And people are tired, and some of them exhausted. We've seen, I think, a fifth of the mayors in this Commonwealth aren't running for re-election. That's a huge statement. Some of them first-time mayors, they've just thrown their hands up and saying, I can't keep doing this because it doesn't stop. Anyway, that's my diatribe on that. What would be your greatest hope of something you could achieve as a judge?
My greatest hope would be to continue to work on the efficiencies of the processes and how matters are heard before the court, to work on this unfortunate backlog, and also to address, as I touched on, the issue of the pro se litigants. It's to add to your point, prior to the pandemic, you could fill a courthouse with people. Mm-hmm. And you could have lawyer for the day representatives. You had probation staff there. Now, unfortunately, because of the limitations of gathering within the courthouses, the ability for the court to offer those services has been encumbered. So going forward, I would say that would be those would be my goals. And I think they dovetail nicely together.
Yep. And I would hope personally that, I always say we all want to win, no matter what we do. But in court, we want to win. But I think even more than that, people want to be heard.
I agree.
And I think it's really important that they feel validated, they feel heard, and they feel seen. watching the time here. Shoot, my thought just went out. My last thing I want to say, and then I'm finished, Madam Chair. You mentioned something in your opening remarks that struck me, and I've never heard anyone talk about it before. I have personally spoken about it as part of my privilege that I have in life, and I have a lot of it. I didn't grow up rich, but I grew up middle class. But I grew up with something that you mentioned, and I think it is a huge privilege in that I don't take for granted, and I try to put in perspective when I'm dealing with folks, whatever that issue is I come from, you had an intact family.
Yes.
And I think that is, I think the value of that is unknown right now or underestimated. And I just wanted to say thank you for mentioning that and for acknowledging that it matters to people. And not to say that a single parent family doesn't matter, but it is a different privilege that those of us who have had two parents have. And anyway, thank you. I have been satisfied so far. If I have any further questions, I will connect with you again. I really did enjoy our talk. We talked a lot about Greece, where I've spent a lot of time when I was younger. Have a soft spot in my heart for it. Anyway, thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor.
Councilor Anella?
Yes. Yes, Councilor. A child should enjoy the benefit of having both of his or her parents in their life, absent one of the most extraordinary of circumstances, violence, abuse, anything of that nature.
I got it. Does that mean 50-50?
That would be the ideal. Yes, Counselor.
Okay. And how far away would they have to live for you to say, it's too far? Obviously, if someone lives in New York and someone lives in Boston, it's too far. You live where and how many miles, say? You'd feel comfortable with.
Oh, you know what? I don't know. Not to challenge in any way. I don't know that I would put a numerical number on in terms of miles. I would want to evaluate what facts, what options are available, what's the schedule.
And you're in charge.
Yeah,
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So if you're asking me what number of miles is too much?
Yeah, I'll make it real simple.
Sure.
You have a 10-year-old son.
Okay.
Okay, and he can get to school. Be a pain in the neck, but it could take him 45 minutes to get to school.
Okay.
Okay, and somebody lives, I don't know, 18, 20 miles away. Okay. And the parenting plan is, well, you tell me. And it's contested. Both sides, that's the real key. I mean, if it's not contested, it's contested. Both parents are great people. One's a doctor, one's a lawyer, What are you going to do?
I would say to you, I would handle that case in the same way I would want a judge to handle it if it involved my own daughter. And that time in the car, while not perfect, not ideal, sometimes those are great moments and give parents great opportunities to spend time with their children. So the amount of distance relative to travel, I will readily acknowledge that, there is a too far distance, but sometimes that's an excellent opportunity for the child and the parent to bond, especially in the age of devices.
I get it. Without due respect, I'm a real staunch advocate for children. And without due respect, you really didn't answer my question.
Oh.
So in other words, would you give someone 15? Again, you said your daughter.
Yes.
You live, it's an hour ride.
Yes.
To go to the school, whatever school
yes.
she's going to go to, an hour away. And would you have a 50-50, 3.5 days at your house, 3 days, one person's house, 4 days, and then alternated? That's something you like? That's too much.
It borders on too much because of if you're talking an hour, because that time starts to detract from the child's ability to sleep in, do homework, and things of that nature. So I think anywhere when you start talking about transportation to school in the hour range, I think you start to get into a complicated.
And you'd feel more comfortable in the hour, like what, 5-2, every other weekend?
Something along those lines.
Yeah, really disappointed in that. I know a situation. There were two children an hour away. okay? They had to take a boat, and then they had to take the train, and it was exactly 50-50. Disappointed in the answer because I'm a strong advocate.
Maybe I'm missing something, Counselor. I apologize.
Okay. I'm familiar with a situation
Yes.
where 2 boys lived in Hingham 4 days a week and lived in Jamaica Plain 3 days a week. And then it was alternating. 4 days in Jamaica Plain, 3 days in Hingham. They had to take a boat. You got me, a boat, okay? Then when they got to the boat, they had to take a train. It was a little over an hour. It worked perfectly. So I hope you'd have a little change of heart on that.
In that respect, yes, I agree with you. And that's why I was suggesting, Counselor, and again, not to be argumentative, just so that I can clarify my position. I think those opportunities to travel with the parent allow for a really meaningful experience between the child and the parent.
Okay, we won't get into it further, but in my hypothetical, the parent was not, they were not traveling. They take a boat and then the train.
I understand.
So a little different. What about parenting plan, FaceTime, Zoom?
So I have a case like that. I don't find it ideal. I find
You
it.
find it acceptable?
There are no, not as the sole means of visitation.
And what about if there's parenting plan and whatever, either spouse is supposed to pick up the child and the other spouse is, oh, so-and-so sick. And this happened like 3 times in the last 2 months. You get lawyers' fees now, contempt. The lawyers charge a lot of money. What do you do in a situation like that?
It's always fact specific, but generally, I think it becomes the court's responsibility when the parties can handle it to enforce the order. So the time that the child is supposed to be with that parent actually occurs.
And are you someone who will make sure that the time with the other spouse, at least they'll make up that time?
Yes, I believe in that.
I like that. The pandemic, we all know what's going on with the pandemic. Yet someone has a trial before he says, no way. I'm not vaccinated. I'm the attorney. Or my client's not vaccinated. Or even if I am vaccinated, I don't want to go to court. And I'm not doing a trial on Zoom. Okay? What are you doing? You're going to grant continuances and they could be indefinite.
I would not be inclined to grant a continuance on that basis because there are alternatives to appearing in person.
And what are they for a trial?
It would be the Zoom option, which is not ideal. But if indeed those were concerns that couldn't be alleviated by existing regulations regarding in-person appearances, I would do everything to accommodate so that a resolution to the underlying action could be accomplished.
I asked the same question to a chief of not the probate court. Again, and you're going to think I'm disagreeing with you on everything. That chief of another court said, there's no way I would force a lawyer to come in. A lawyer's going to want to look at the client eye to eye. One thing if it's a motion, but a trial, again, I have a different viewpoint, but I appreciate it.
It's one of those. I would think it would come down to, as I said, weighing the competing considerations in each individual case.
Got it. I'm almost done. Alimony, there's a statute. I don't do probate. Then we had the new law 2, 3, 4 years ago. It's deductible. It's not deductible. What's the statute saying now with respect to how do we determine? The statute hasn't changed, has it, in determining the amount of alimony in the last 5 years?
And what hasn't changed with respect to the way it's regulated by length of marriage, if that's what you mean.
No, but I'm saying since, yeah. Okay, yeah, I'm good. No, that's fine.
So we breaking for?
No.
I said we breaking afterwards?
And I have one more question, so I'm almost done.
Are we going to break?
1 o'clock.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Call our assembly to order, and I recognize Councilor Devaney for our prayer and pledge today.
Thank you. Before I say my prayer, I want to thank you, and I want the governor to be thanked, and our Massachusetts professional firefighters to continue the beautiful memorial that we have every year. And as a widow of a firefighter who's in the circle of the fallen Massachusetts firefighters, it means a lot to me. And I think we don't give credit to who started it, and that was Governor. Governor Salucci. I know it's emotional, and my cousin, Auditor Joe DiNucci. And it's a beautiful, beautiful ceremony, and I think we should recognize that. And I want to thank the governor for having a shovel last year when I asked him. So having said that, today we offer our prayers to the families of the 13 in the military serving our country who were killed in action while helping people through the Afghanistan evacuation. We pray that they will find solace knowing their loved one was a hero, and we all grieve with them. We especially remember our local hero, Marine Corps Sergeant Johanna Rosario Picado of Lawrence. We remember, and we will never forget, the families of loved ones who died in 9/11. From the 343 firefighters to civilians. Dear God, give these families the courage to continue their lives in a way their loved ones would want. Dear God, through your intercession, we pray for their solace, and we pray for peace in our world. Amen. Now, I also want to add, as personal privilege, Lieutenant Governor, a personal prayer. And it's difficult for me to say, but it's for civility here in the council. When I vote no, my women colleagues speak out. And, you know, slander goes out to a lot of people, and it affects a lot of people, and it has affected me. In the past, when I voted no on a nominee, and my two colleagues said that I was prejudiced. And that public quotes of my colleagues went out to my 32 district. 800,000 people read that. I can't take those words back, and I'm proud of my record. So it was difficult for me to come to the last assembly. It was a day after my sister Alice was buried. I didn't expect to vote because I had asked for a continuance of an incomplete hearing that we had for Sergio Cavalis. It was inadvertently cut off, and I was the presiding chair, and so no one heard from me. And it was especially important because I had asked the governor to withdraw this nominee. So I got a lot of letters, got a lot of calls asking me to finish that hearing. So I sent a notice to the lieutenant governor, the governor, the attorneys, all the counselors, and said, you know, I'm only going to have counselors who were present who didn't speak. And that was me. So they could come. We don't have to have a quorum. And it'd probably be 10 or 15 minutes. So when I came into the assembly, I was really not ready because I assumed we were going to have the hearing on Monday. And when I voted no, my women colleagues said it was a smear campaign that I was having, and I only wanted a hearing to change votes. These specious accusations must stop. There is not a board, federal, state, or local, that allows one member to slander another. And I'm asking you to stop now I'm not going to be bullied anymore. And it's very embarrassing to have to say this publicly, but that's been my secret prayer all along, and it's not changing, Lieutenant Governor. So I'm asking you, as the chair, when you chair this assembly, not to allow this to continue. And that is my prayer. Amen. Now, we're going to salute the flag, and then afterwards, I have to say, I made a pledge when I first got elected that whenever I would happen to be if I did vote no on a nominee, I would present it at the hearing, and I would document it and have it in the council chamber, our office, for anyone to see it. And so because I wasn't able to have that opportunity at the assembly, after the Pledge of Allegiance, I will be giving that statement. And thank you. This is so embarrassing, but we have to be civil, and that's my prayer. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation.
I recognize
So this is
Councilor
my-
Duff for a
so this
motion
will
to
be my-
record advice and consent for the financial warrant.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I recognize Councilor Ianella for a motion to record advice and consent for the pending list of notaries public and justices of the peace.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We have a new nomination today. The Honorable Kathleen Campbell has been nominated to the position of Associate Justice of the Superior Court. Councilor Kennedy, that's within your jurisdiction.
Call this afternoon, I'll put back Valerie open the hearing.
Okay, very good.
I'm
Thank you.
sorry, what's the date you have?
We're going to get a date and circulate that to the
What
members.
is this?
We are circulating.
I want to speak with the nominee.
Okay, I hope you'll make it in 2 weeks because they're required to give their resume 8 days before the hearing.
I'll let Valerie know as soon as I.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Counsel.
That concludes our business today.
Thank
Thank you.
I have my statement that I
You
made.
present your statement, we'll add that to
Okay,
the record. Okay, thank you.
excuse me, this is part of the assembly to give my
Oh,
statement.
we're done.
I can't believe this. I've been doing this for 21 years and I'm not allowed today to do it.
All right, we're going to.
How outrageous.
Thank you very much.
Amen.
Outrageous.
Council.
Yes. Counselor, you have one more
Yeah,
question?
finish this question here.
Yes, Council.
The alimony.
Yes,
There used to be a set percentage, wasn't there? Or is the statute now even a percentage? How does that work?
So
In
the-
determining, I know the length and all that, but saying, yeah.
So what we do now is we factor in with a ratio, depending on the amount, falls within the range of 20 to 25%.
And excuse me, just to understand, and what was it 10 years ago?
So it would depend on how much income.
But the same 22,
It
25?
was in that range, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it hasn't, the range hasn't changed?
No, it's not tax deductible anymore
Right.
under the tax code. So what we do is.
And it's not income?
Correct.
Yes.
So what we do is we try to compensate for that when creating an alimony.
And is that just, that there's no statute, or like, the legislature hasn't changed the law. The old law, I totally agree with you, but the old law is still in effect.
That's, yes,
And you got, the judges say, hey, we can't have it that way, it's not fair.
it becomes unduly burdensome.
Okay, my last question.
Yes,
Prenuptial.
yes,
I heard somebody mention prenuptial.
yes.
When would a circumstances, a realistic circumstance, where you throw out the prenuptial? And again, I'm not talking about someone was high on drugs or alcohol, but a regular situation, it might be thrown out.
I think the two most common, excuse me, are where each party wasn't individually represented or had the opportunity to consult with counsel, or there wasn't a full, fair, and accurate disclosure of the assets, liabilities, and income. Those are the two most common. I
I
would
don't have any more questions. The one thing I am, and I didn't mean to give you a hard time, I'm a strong advocate for children's rights.
yes, sir.
So my only thing would hope, always think, and you said it, put yourself in that situation. You know, it's so important to your daughter or your son. It's so important to go to a game or to a movie. So when you have something that is 5 days here, 2 days here, it makes it a lot more difficult. You know what? I'm sure you can do it. If you have, to me, the most important thing is two parents. They may not like each other, but if you got two parents that you believe in and they're not agreeing at all on the parenting plan, try to make it happen. Think of what you would like in your situation to
Yeah.
ever happen. I'm sure it's not going to, but to me, it's so important. You use these words, joint physical custody, joint, what is that? I'm talking about 50-50 when possible. And only when both parties want it. If somebody doesn't want it, that's a different situation. Because I always think the children have to come first. It's such a big thing with me. And I didn't mean to give you a hard time, but I hope you think of that. Every single time, think if that was you, how you would like.
Yes, Counselor.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Counselor.
Right. Counselor Jubenville.
Did you forget my name?
No,
I think she did.
I think you did.
I was going to call you Ionella.
I don't know.
The two of you are like Siamese twins anyways, but
I don't have any questions. I think you're a good candidate. You got a lot of diverse experience and you have a great reputation in there. So
Thank you, Counselor.
Counselor Kennedy.
I just have one question. We have a long question on the phone,
Yes, Counselor.
but, and it's the question I asked you. Why do we break up trials in probate cases and divorce cases? It's the one complaint I'm constantly getting about judges, that they start a trial in September, go to 12 or 1 o'clock, whatever the allotted time is, and then the next time they're back is in November or December, and then they're back again in January. Why don't you finish a trial once you start it? Most of them aren't going to take more than a day or two. It's the one thing I've been pounding the probate judges for 11 years since I've been here, and I'm just banging my head against the wall because nothing changes.
I will tell you, Counselor, I will take your comments from our conversation, lengthy about this subject, as well as this today. I am going to be one spoke in the proverbial wheel, but I will take these words to heart, and I will do everything I can to address that issue.
I hope you
going
do.
forward.
I think you're a great candidate. I'll be voting for you next week.
Thank you very much, Counselor.
I echo the sentiments of Counsel Ionello. I'm a dad of 3 girls. The worst day of my life was in the probate court when I had a judge yelling and screaming because he had to be the smartest and most outspoken person in the courtroom every day, all day, just telling me that joint physical custody was not going to work after we spent thousands and thousands of dollars on a GAL who recommended joint physical custody. I'm happy to tell you today that my kids are 22, 27, 29. I have the best relationship any dad could ever want. And they spent half time with me, exactly half time, and it worked out incredibly well. So I'm a huge fan of that, and I will absolutely not vote for anyone who doesn't think that that's a good idea.
Yes, Counselor.
You think it's a good idea?
I do.
Given all other things equal, I understand.
Yes.
he's a smart candidate.
Smart candidate. I'm happy that I was able to and voluntarily paid for my children's education. But do you understand? Do you have any thoughts about that? How the government, who cannot make anyone pay for a child's education, can suddenly do it just because you're divorced? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I apologize, Counselor. I didn't totally hear your question.
Sure. So you have children.
Yes, I do.
You have a choice whether to pay for their college education or not.
Yes.
Why should the government be able to tell you to pay for their education because you get divorced?
So, Counselor, the short answer is that unfortunately that's where the law stands right now. But I will tell you going forward that I will evaluate all of the factors around that issue when it comes before me. In terms of answering what the basis of that were, that may be beyond my pay grade at this point. Unfortunately, my job will be to follow the law.
Maybe when you're on the SJC someday, you can decide what the law should be. I don't know. The other question I have is about, you said you did some prenups. What is the status of the law in Massachusetts? Does it have to be fair and reasonable when executed, fair and reasonable when exercised?
When executed, and then there's an evaluation at the time because it's sought to be exercised depending on what has happened in the interim period. Are there children? What drastic? Actually, it's going to depend a lot on what the contents of the prenuptial agreement are. That's where it gets a little bit difficult to scrutinize.
Does it kind of lose its validity overall?
No, it doesn't lose its validity, but the contents, the language, the specific language contained within the prenup, because prenuptial agreements are executed in various circumstances. The law changes sometimes in the interim, or additional language is added to forms and things of that nature. And sometimes they are amended or modified to correspond with changing practice or thinking something along those lines.
Is that true what the judge said? You have about 5 trials?
Yes, I prepared for trial on a multitude of occasions, but as a consequence of effective, what I consider and what I think bears out effective pretrial preparation, I have been able to avoid causing my clients to go through the trauma, expense, which I think is largely unnecessary, given how much damage litigation does to families and especially children. And along those lines, I will tell you, the times I have when I deal with modifications after a case has gone to judgment, years down the road or something, invariably, the litigants are always talking about what the other party said at trial. It leaves an impression on families, and that's why I've concentrated my focus on resolving disputes.
But you think you have the skills to be a judge of a trial?
I do, Your Honor, or I do, Counselor, because
I'll never I'll never be in your seat. I can guarantee you that. God bless you for wanting to do it.
Thank you very much. I do, based on my years of experience in counseling parties in connection with mediation, conciliation, and clients in connection with cases around the rules of evidence. Because very often people believe that if they just hear me, the court will find in my favor, and there are limitations and constraints around that I've had to work with through the years.
Well, Consular Hurley is a big fan of yours, and I listened carefully to your advocates here today. And based on my own training, education, and experiences, we say, I think you're a good guy, and you're going to do well in the court and have the right demeanor, which is extremely important.
I appreciate that, Counselor.
Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Counselor Powell?
Thank you.
Mine, we're breaking it 1.
Absolutely. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
We heard from Attorney Quigley in particular about your breadth of experience. Counselor Ainella touched on that. I think it's important to have that breadth of perspective, regardless of how it specifically intersects. So I appreciate that. You spent time working in Ohio Children's Services or Clinton
That's correct.
County, and that's essentially comparable to the Massachusetts DCF.
It is.
So when you were working, do you know the expression lobby kids in Massachusetts? Are you familiar with that expression?
I'm not.
So in Massachusetts, we underfund our DCF to the extent that we have children in DCF custody spending their entire day in the lobby, as it were, of a DCF office because there's no placement for them until they find some emergency placement. Did anything like that happen in your experience in Ohio?
Yes, it did. It's a chronic problem finding alternative living situations for children, especially in crisis situations.
Yeah. It seems to me like Massachusetts has the resources where we could resolve that problem. But I suppose every problem, people say that. And then the last thing I want to ask you, rather than iterate, I suppose it's a statement. I, too, have 50-50 custody of my children. I live 45 minutes away, which easily turns into an hour commuting to school. And I can't imagine an arrangement that would be better for my children than that particular arrangement. So I guess I put a point on that one. I'm impressed with your experience. I'm impressed with your references. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you. All right, Counselor Devaney, do you want to start now or you want to wait till after lunch?
What is your, I'm sorry, what did you advise us to do?
We're going to break for lunch
Okay,
at 1 o'clock.
all right.
It's 5:00. You want to break?
No, I think I should wait then.
Okay.
I'll wait till afterwards, okay?
All right.
Yeah. Thank
All
you.
right, folks.
Thank you,
See
Counselor.
y'all back here at 2 o'clock.
Thank you.
You afforded me. I can't believe it. We don't have a way to get in the store. It doesn't open. But you know what? We should have it on our card that we can come in. Okay, enough said. First of all, I want to thank you for, meeting with me, coming 2 hours. That was wonderful.
My pleasure.
And you got to
Thank
bring
you
your
for your
family. You
time.
got to get a Belgian waffle. You got to be in the Hall of Fame. So anyway, but first of all, I was just very impressed with your resume. And, it has compassion all over it, which is very important to me. And that's why I first want to go to your, the question about what about the court. And you're asked, okay, wait a minute, where is that? 78, I think it is. Okay, the greatest challenge. Okay, 78, that is.
Yeah.
What is the greatest challenge confronting the court to which you are applying, and how would you address it? And you said, I believe that the greatest challenge facing the Massachusetts probate and family court system is the dramatic rise of self-represented parties and the impact that income disparity has on parties appearing before the court to secure legal counsel. Challenges made more difficult in child custody disputes, and even further exacerbated where one party in such case is represented and the other pro se.
Yes.
I'm going to tell you, I've been here 21 years, and no one has ever answered that question like that. And that means a lot to me, because I have been very involved the last couple of years about illegal home foreclosures. And there are people out there that do that, third parties. And these are people that, are not represented, and they're at the mercy of the court, and they don't understand. And so I'm so glad that you said that. So what would you do as a judge to address that?
Pre-pandemic, I may have alluded it to this earlier. Pre-pandemic, the court was open. Many cases would be heard. Courts would have independent programs, lawyer for the day program. There would be probation staff doing mediation. You might have other volunteer lawyer programs going on where that issue could be addressed. I will tell you, with the pandemic, that routine or practice has been made more difficult. Right now, I think we're going to have to be very creative, work together, and come up with solutions to the problem of getting those programs to the people that are in need of them. I think it's unfortunately going to be an evolving situation, which I think is further exacerbated by the fact that the Hampden County Hall of Justice is closed.
I was impressed with that answer, because we haven't seen that. In 21 years, I've never seen that. So you know what you bring to the court that that we haven't seen? That you've been involved as a child welfare worker and caseworker supervising child abuse. And I can't even, neglect. I can't even imagine doing that. So having had that experience, and I know you've done a lot pro bono in that area, is there someone that stands out in your mind to talk about?
A case from my social work background? Yes, I touched on it in, I think.
If you've already said.
No. I think I touched on it in my application.
Yes,
but it's been a powerful reminder of the authority of the court and the impact that court orders have on the litigants and their families. And I recite a situation in which I was a proponent in a case of removing a child, and had worked hard on the case, believed it was in the best interest of the child, and then having been part of the effort to remove the child and seeing the impact on the child and seeing the impact on the child's family, having seen that impact had left an indelible impression on me.
Well, we need you with that experience. I have been very upset with the Department of Children and Families. And, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to go out to a home and see a 7-year-old who's being starved by his father, and he's the weight of a year-old. And they close the books and say he's doing his best. And that happens. And we've seen it over and over. And I don't think a lot of judges, I know they don't, the ones that come to me in their J&C, have this experience to see that lots of times a child is removed and they're sent back to the same sexual abuse, physical abuse, and it's heartbreaking. We don't have families like when I was growing up. I mean, it's mothers that are letting the boyfriend, they have more allegiance to the boyfriend and let them abuse the child and eventually even kill them. So that's what I'm concerned about. So that's what caught my attention. And everything that you've written in your questionnaire goes back to that, you know? And so what was the most rewarding, do you think, that you had?
You know, there was a young man, at the time I went to work for the agency, I was the only male caseworker. And there was a young man, and I was with him and assigned his case for 4 years, 4 or 5 years actually. And watching him grow up into adulthood, he had been removed at a young age, was in a foster home, and watching him go through and grow with him in many respects through 4-H and that sort of a thing. And it was a very rewarding experience. Yeah. Wayne was his name. I won't reveal his last name, but
what is the most disappointing of everything of this, and as a lawyer, you know, cases that you've had?
You know, I have a case right now where I represent a father, and he has a young child. I believe the child is about 4 or 5 years old, if memory serves. Visitation has been spotty with him. It's been difficult to keep him in the game, so to speak, and do what he needs to do to have visitation on a consistent basis. And he, as a result of various setbacks, he's got his own challenges. He's been unable to work progressively towards having a consistent visitation schedule. There have been some complications recently, which gave the court some grave concern, and we're trying to overcome those. But I would say I'm frustrated by the fact that working with him and getting him to do what he needs to do so that he can have the visitation that he wants and that his child needs. I'm disappointed.
Do you believe in joint custody?
Very much so.
Right.
And obviously, except in cases of incidents of abuse.
Yeah, I'm talking about 2 good parents.
Yes.
What criteria would you use for removal?
So, the cases talk about, the best interest of the child, standard being really the paramount consideration in a removal case right now. But I'm such a firm believer that a child needs both parents. Yeah. In terms of what criteria, it would be an extremely unique case.
What about if a divorced couple,
mm-hmm.
2 good people, and the wife wants to move with 2 toddlers across the country to Oregon?
Mm-hmm.
What criteria do you use for that?
Well, I think you go back to the best interest of the child. If you've got 2 good parents and father is a part of the children's life, the mother shouldn't be in a position of depriving that father, and more importantly, the children of a rape.
I'm so glad you said that.
To have their father.
When I first was elected, it was the first year, and this woman was nominated for a judgeship, and she was in probate. And I read about her in the Globe, and I wanted to cry. There was a couple who were divorced, and they were good people, and there were 2 little toddlers, and the father was devoted. He only lived a quarter of a mile from the wife who had the children, and he'd see them almost every day. He'd stay there the day before Christmas to see when they got up and all of that. So she went to court and asked to move to Oregon with her children. She didn't have a relative there. She didn't have a friend. She didn't have a job, nothing. And so my thoughts were, it's vindictive. And so this man is never going to be father to the children. It's like a divorce to the children. And she gave him visitation. I hate that word. They should throw it out. Visitation on a computer from 6 to 7. You can't hug a computer. When I read that, I thought, that's when I don't have a crystal ball. Because sometimes you're disappointed in the judges that you have voted for, and they do something like that. My hat goes out to that man. I mean, there's no way that he can see them on a weekend or see the games or whatever. So I'm glad you said that. There has to be a criteria. So how many people would you say that you have represented in 23 years?
Well, I can tell you, if I just think, about my filing catalog, this would include real estate transactions and small business clients and estates, but over 3,000.
Wow, isn't that great? So, I'm not concerned when the council's asking about cases. I mean, you have a unique position going to the probate and family. Do you know what I mean? And I think the conciliation I've read that you have done is wonderful. And if that works, then that's great. Now, the other thing is, I like that you have 98% of the family and probate court that you're going to, 98%. This is not something that you're going to give a consolation prize to someone who hasn't really devoted themselves in that area. And your 4 years, seeing abused children, neglected, and working with them and bringing that to the court, I haven't seen that. I haven't seen that, and I can't say it enough. It means a lot to me. Now, your clients, would you say, all right, let the children aside. Do you have a majority of men or women that you have?
Well, I would say it's equal and across the board equal.
Yep. And I have to tell you, I love solo practitioners. And I have my own philosophy because I feel it's great you got someone from district attorney's office or attorney general, but they're given the case and the police has got them halfway there. You choose who you're going to represent. Do you know what I mean? You're not told represent this person. You choose that person. And that means a lot to me. The other thing is, I think you have a different perspective as a judge when you're sitting on the bench and when attorney comes in with a client, that client is paying for the service. Maybe you'll bring them, I don't know. Maybe you can arrange it. I know it's not that easy. Everybody comes in at 9. But if you could arrange to have them in and out fast. The other thing is, responsibility. You have to pay the rent. You have to pay the coffee machine breaks. You have to shovel the walk. You have that responsibility. I like that. I like that, that you understand the other side too. And the pro bono, I can't say enough about it because there are so many people that right now need it, especially with this pandemic. I can't tell you how many friends of mine have lost business as a florist. It was buying flowers. A restaurant, 53 years she was in Watertown. A bakery, 30 years. So I know that there's a lot of people in need when they go to court. Now, I'm an animal lover. So I know that this probably isn't the most important thing that you ever did in 23 years, but tell the public about that story about the dog biting.
There was a situation in which I represented a small business owner, and his dog had bitten a child in his home, and then it occurred again a short time later. And I represented the dog owner, he and his wife, I should say, after the town where they live voted to euthanize the dog as a consequence of having bitten twice. And after a one-day trial in the Southern Berkshire District Court, and as a result of soliciting expert testimony from a veterinarian from Tufts University, we were able to come up with a solution short of euthanizing the dog, where the homeowner had to erect a fence and an electric fence as a second barrier, and the dog's life was saved. The irony being, dogs scare me a little.
Well, when I look at that, I started reading, I said, oh, I hope the ending is that they euthanize this dog. Oh, no, I'll be sick. So that was a happy ending. So what's the longest you have been with someone following their case? Or their life problem?
So I would say I have several cases where a modification, for example, I represent them in a divorce. A year or two later, a modification is filed. That gets resolved. A year or two later, a modification is filed. So in looking at a case in that way, I would say it could be 10 years.
Wow.
I have a number of cases where I was involved with the custody of custody determination in a case, and I've been in practice long enough where I now represent those young people when they're buying homes and going through their own life struggles.
What about that murder case? It was the wife that was, I don't know whether she hired someone or she was involved in it. So
Yes.
tell us about that one.
That was an estate case. I represented the
estate.
the decedent's estate
Yeah.
in connection with a homicide. The decedent was, as a result of a criminal trial, found to have worked in concert with her son to murder her husband. And the son was from the wife's prior marriage. And as a consequence of that, given the law at the time, I had to coordinate not only management of the estate and the distribution of the estate assets, but I also made arrangements with a colleague to file a wrongful death action in the Superior Court to preclude the wife as the wrongdoer from receiving any portion of the estate.
So is
Very
that,
very sad case.
is that over now? Or?
That one is over. Yes.
I like your writings. You
Thank you.
really, that's so important, isn't it, a judge to know how to write? And on that one, the Tina versus Patrick O'Hagerty, you want to tell us about that one?
That was a complicated one.
Yeah, I thought it was.
Very complicated, and it went on for quite some time. Father, as a consequence of the economic downturn, had a very good job, lost it, got it back, lost it, got it back. Mother was struggling. I represented father. Child had lived with mother for several years, then went with father for several years, and then went back to move with mother for several years. And it involved all sorts of complicated socialization issues. Son felt bad for mom, wanted to support mom, but missed dad. And it involved the parties had a very difficult time with visitation or parenting time is a better way to characterize that, parenting time. And child support was a continual source of frustration and part of the dispute. And it just went round and round and round until ultimately the child turned 18 and kind of resolved itself through.
So she was sentenced.
I'm sorry?
The wife was sentenced.
Oh, no, not in the Haggerty.
That one, no.
No. That was
Now,
child support.
You know, I've always been concerned about grandparents' rights. I'm a grandmother. And I'm thinking there is no law to protect grandparents to say that, say that the daughter-in-law, the divorce, the daughter-in-law doesn't like her and she's not going to let her see the grandchildren. But there's no law to protect the grandmother from seeing her grandchildren. So you had a case with grandparents, and what was that? Was it Laughlin? Have I got the right one, Laughlin?
I don't think that was grandparents.
There was one case.
With grandparents,
Do
yes.
you know, Mir?
Yeah.
Let me refresh my recollection here.
You were, I think, a mediator.
Oh, in a oh,
Yeah, mediation.
Laughlin
Yeah.
Carter. Yes, I was the mediator in that case. Well, that one was even more complicated because the grandparents were guardians. And each of the parents, it became a triangle of disputes between the biological parents and the grandparents who were guardian. And the mother lived with grandparents as guardians, and the biological father wanted the child back. And it became a very complicated balancing act to try to create an arrangement because the child had grown up with the grandparents.
Now, do you question the children and to get what they want to do, who they want to live with?
In that instance, no, because the child, I believe, had, as I recall, had counsel, had a counsel representing.
Okay.
And it wouldn't, in that context, it wouldn't be appropriate for me to have direct communication with the child. But it was through the child's attorney, the ARC attorney, that we collectively came up with an arrangement that I was able to help oversee the creation of an arrangement that really took everyone's interests, or put everyone's interests, and most importantly that of the child, and and we were able to set up a visitation schedule that worked and to give the child a circumstance in which he was surrounded by the love of those he had grown up with.
Right, that seems right. This is not pertinent to you, but it's just a philosophy question. How do you feel about increasing the age in juvenile court?
Well, to be candid, I haven't given that much thought. I don't have I would have to do some research, I would say, not to avoid responding to your question, but not something I have an opinion on at the moment, I guess I would say.
Well, I have an amateur opinion. I don't like to see that because I think that the juvenile court are overworked now. And not only that, but we're seeing so many young people murdering and doing all these egregious acts that I don't know. I think I'd rather keep it at the age. They already increased it, you know? Yeah. So will you be staying at that courthouse or will they move you around? I'm not familiar with that area at all. That's foreign to me.
I believe that I'll be, as I presently understand it, but again, that probably outside of my pay grade, I believe I'll be stationed at the Hampton County Probate and Family Court in Springfield.
Right. So what kind of changes would you like to see? You've been going into that court for 23 years now. What kind of changes would you like to see?
I think that question would have been easier to answer prior to the pandemic. And right now that building is closed as a consequence of some environmental concerns at the site. I think that...
Are you able to go into court now?
I don't believe so, not in Hampden County.
Did they have any opening dates or anything?
Not that I'm aware of at present. I think it's a constantly evolving situation out of concern for the health and safety.
I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, I don't know how they will ever go back to the backlog of the cases. I don't think they can, you know? I don't know how.
It'll be a real challenge.
Yeah. So how do you see your clients now during the pandemic?
So I either see them by Zoom. I have one of the office spaces where I have my office is a very long room, and sometimes I'll put them on one end and I'll be on the other end. I also, in my small conference space, have a plastic barrier and we wear masks. We talk about vaccination status and things of that nature, but we make it work. But most court hearings that I'm involved in presently are by Zoom.
Do you have any way to encourage someone who has a problem, maybe marital or whatever, to go to see marital counseling or something like that?
I address that routinely.
You do it routinely?
Yes, especially with my mediation cases, private mediation. I always give a quick check to make sure that they feel as though they've exhausted all their options and if this is really how they want to proceed.
So how many mediation cases, before the pandemic, do you see in a year?
I would say, frankly, I could see one a week, but I try. It gets to at a certain point, you have to try to limit the volume so that you can keep up with the work. But I would say 15 or 20 a year, and that would involve at least 3 meetings for each one. Maybe even more.
Yeah, that was the Loughran Carter that you had. That's what that was.
Yes.
Yeah.
I apologize. In my mind, for some reison, I always characterize that as a guardianship.
I don't know how you keep track of all the names. It's amazing, But I agree with you that a judge should have volunteer work in his background, involved in the community, helping people in service. I really believe that. And that's why I am trying to get this J&C to appoint people like you of your age in the 50s and over. It's because, again, that's life experience. And you're not going to get someone 40 that has done pro bono work like you or gone out in the world to see how other people are living and having that compassion. So I'm not going to keep you any further. I don't know what you're going to hear me. I was banging at the door for 10 minutes. I said, someone's going to hear me. I hurt my hand.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
But all right, now just my last question. Okay, so the pandemic is over. So what do you see as the challenges that you're going to face now? All of this backlog?
I would say primarily that because the citizens of the Commonwealth come to the court when they have a problem and they seek a resolution. And so I'll be under, self-imposed or otherwise, I think a lot of pressure to help those people get to the resolution they need and want.
Well, I'm impressed with your community work, your volunteering, your church involvement, everything. And I couldn't be happier. And I don't have a poker face, and I'll be very happy that you got appointed. I'm glad you applied. This is your first time.
Yes.
Wow, good for you.
Thank you.
So, you've had a long day and you got a long ride. So I'm going to let you people go. I hope you had a chance to get something to eat.
Yes.
Did you? That's
Yes.
important. That was good, Mary. You let them eat.
Yes.
Okay.
Just so you both know, you probably don't know it, but in Hampden County, they had retired judges come back 2 days a month,
Yes.
and they went through all of the 1A divorces. That's when everything's everybody agrees. So that backlog has been taken care of. So
Yes.
the wheat has been separated from the chaff. so to speak. All right, so I declare this
It
meeting-
really was a pleasure to meet with you.
You as well.
And for
Thank
you
you.
to come that distance. And did you get traffic going home?
No
No?
problem.
Okay. We timed
Smooth
it.
sailing. Yes.
And it didn't rain.
Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Hurley.
All right.
And we've got to be able to get in that door. We've got to get that fixed so that